Makena.
I'm Nancy, and we're presenting on the ISIS genocide of the Yazidis on August 2014.
So in early August 2014, ISIS began moving towards Sinjar, which is where the genocide took place mostly. And Kurdish Peshmerga forces withdrew from Sinjar, and basically that left the people of Sinjar and the Yazidis defenseless from ISIS. And then 50,000 Yazidis fled to Mount Sinjar and were trapped by ISIS. Basically, when the Yazidis found out that ISIS was moving in towards them, they fled to the mountain, but then when they got up to the mountain, they were trapped. And then when ISIS clearly saw them going up into the mountain, they slaughtered the people who wouldn't become jihadists, which is the extreme interpretation of Islam that ISIS is the religion of. And then Yazidi women were forced into sexual slavery. On August 7th, Iraqi British Royal Air Force and U.S. Air Force began emergency airdrops to the Yazidis that were trapped on the mountain that were still alive, because many of them were starving to death and dying of dehydration. On August 8th of 2014, U.S. airstrikes began, and by August 13th, a large percentage of the Yazidis had been evacuated. And now, just recently in this past August, there's still thousands of Yazidi women and children that are missing. So this is a map of where the genocide took place. It took place, as you can see here, in northern Iraq and Syria. And so here, again, is kind of a zoomed out photo of all of Iraq and Syria, and it's up in that area up there. So prior to the genocide, leading all the way back to 1640 in the Ottoman Empire, there were previous tensions between the Sunnis and the Yazidis. In the Ottoman Empire, the Sunnis were the Muslims, and then in 1892, Sultan Abdul Hamid ordered a campaign of mass murder of the Yazidis in order to Islamize the Ottoman Empire. So there had been religious battles between them prior to 2014. In 2007, a bus in Mosul was hijacked. Muslims and Christians were told to get off, but the remaining Yazidis were driven to an eastern Mosul location, and then they were murdered. And then in August 3rd of 2014, ISIL or ISIS militants attacked and took over Sinjar, a town that was predominantly inhabited by the Yazidis, and this was the beginning of the genocide. So causes: ISIS is an extremist jihadist group that considered the Yazidis to be apostates who must be condemned to death, and ISIS wanted to eliminate the Yazidis from Iraq. So because the Yazidis were not part of the Muslim extreme religion that they were part of, and they are not Muslim, and ISIS only wanted there to be a Muslim population, that's why they were targeted.
So the key actors involved, the perpetrators was the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, known as ISIS or ISIL. The bystanders were the non-ISIS Muslims, and the victims were the Yazidis, considered as the women, children, and men.
So we have a primary document that was from the Human Rights Campaign, and basically we'll just read you a quote from here. It's kind of a long quote, but I think that it's pretty meaningful and worth reading. So it says that ISIS has sought to destroy the Yazidis through killing, sexual slavery, enslavement, torture, and inhuman and degrading treatment, and forcible transfer, causing serious bodily and mental harm. The inflictions of conditions of life that bring out a slow death, the imposition of measures to prevent Yazidi children from being born, including forced conversion of adults, the separation of Yazidi men and women, and mental trauma, and the transfer of Yazidi children from their own families and placing them with ISIS fighters, thereby cutting them off from their beliefs and practices of their own religious community and erasing their identity as Yazidis. The public statements and conduct of ISIS and its fighters clearly demonstrate that ISIS intended to destroy the Yazidis of Sinjar, composing the majority of the world's Yazidi population in whole or in part. So basically this was written for the UN to read about why that this was considered a genocide. So they were trying to kill a specific religion off, and they were trying to prevent life from happening of future Yazidis. There were family separations, and there was a clear intent to destroy in whole or in part of the group of Yazidis. So we have some first-person accounts. This is from Nadia Murad, and she is a survivor of the genocide of the Yazidis. And here's a quote from her. It says, "I was one of the thousands of Yazidi women kidnapped by the Islamic State and sold into slavery. I endured rape, torture, and humiliation at the hands of multiple militants before I escaped. I was relatively lucky. Many Yazidis went through worse than I did and for much longer. Many are still missing. Many have been killed." And here's another quote from her again. She is now a Nobel Peace Prize winner. She's a writer, and she was a survivor of this, so we thought that a couple quotes from her would be important. And yeah.
Wait.
Do you want to read them?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, she's also the ISIS sex slave, and she wrote a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and her story is basically her weapon to speak out about like what she went through. She said, "While I lay there, another militant stopped in front of us. He was a high-ranking militant named Salwan, who had come with another girl, another young Yazidi from Hardin, who he planned to drop off at the house. While he shot for her replacement, 'Stand up,' he said. When I did it, he kicked me. 'You, the girl with the pink jacket,' I said. 'Stand up.' His eyes were sunk deep into flesh of his wide face, which seemed to be nearly entirely covered in hair. He didn't look like a man, he looked like a monster." And here is a video about her speaking about her story.
Before ISIS came to my village, there was nothing more important to me than my dignity, than my mother, my dear mother. And although she is now gone, my dear mother is with me here today in soul and in spirit. She, along with my brothers and so many others, left this world too soon. And my life in Sinjar as a simple Yazidi farm girl is gone forever. The dreams and hopes of my whole community are gone. As you have heard, the night of August 3rd, 2014, everything changed. Daesh came to kidnap, to murder, to rape. This was genocide. It is that simple. In a matter of days, if not hours, thousands of Yazidis were killed and thousands of women and children were taken just because they were Yazidis. I was taken to Mosul with others. I was used in the way they wanted to use me. I was not alone. And perhaps I was the lucky one. As time passed, I found a way to escape where thousands others could not. They are still captive.
So we thought that video was an impactful video about her story and what she went through.
Another first-person account I found was this woman was talking about it. She says, "The man who brought me that time beat me badly and raped me whenever he wanted. He made me wash his clothes and clean his house. She got away again, this time in a taxi, but the driver brought her to his family. His wife told him to kill her. He locked her in a room and the next day sold her to a man in Mosul. That guy beat me, raped me, and kept me in a locked room. Then he sold me to a man in Syria. Half the things that were done to me I cannot say out loud. But now I was sick, cold, and hungry. There was no one to look after me. I didn't think I could survive much more. Then someone came to the house at 8 o'clock one night and said, 'Sell this girl to me.' They did, and I was rescued. He's been sent by my family. We ran as fast as we could and arrived at Single at midnight. It was March 22nd, 2016. I was home." So I thought this was important because it shows like how she was explaining how she got beaten up and like she was taken by someone to like be raped and like kept in a locked room, and it shows what she went through and like what she was traumatized.
So as far as the killing process, around 50,000 Yazidis fled to Sinjar Mountain, as I was saying in the beginning. And upon arriving there, they were surrounded by ISIS, so they couldn't escape. And many of them died from dehydration and starvation. And then a lot of them were also killed by ISIS members if they were to lower themselves on the mountain at all, or they were faced with either having to convert or being killed, and many of them were killed. Throughout August, ISIS attacked many villages, including the ones listed here, so Hardan, Habal, Sinjar, Ramada, Jaba, Dola, Kana, Sor, etc. There was many more that ISIS invaded. And in these villages, mostly the men were targeted. An estimated of 5,000 men were killed. Here we have a photo of one of the mass graves, and we thought this was kind of an impactful photo because it's pretty heartbreaking to see just a mass grave and the ISIS members just shooting at them. And it's from the largest massacre, which was at the Sinjar Mountain, the Sinjar Massacre. And then there were also an undefined number, but they know that it's at least greater than 500 of women and children that were buried alive in northern Iraq. So they've found now some of these mass graves, but there are probably many more that they have not found yet.
So why this constitutes genocide, we came up with the 10 stages and explained why. So first, the classifications were the Yazidis, considering they were like men, women, and children. And the symbolism we chose were devil worshippers, and how they were discriminations was how ISIS uses political power to deny the freedom and civil rights. Dehumanization, where women were sold like animals. Organization, the government and ISIS armed militias are trained to organize this process for the Yazidis to get killed. Polarization, where propaganda and intermarriage and social interactions destroying the Yazidis' hometowns and threatening to kill them. Preparation of invasion of towns prior to mass killing. Persecution, where Yazidis are identified separate out to women, children, and men. Extermination, where it was like the mass killing. And denial, where government gets rid of evidence, mass graves, and blame it on the Yazidis. So controversies and debates, how it was between a genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes all combined together. So there was a report that finds that widespread abuses committed by ISIL, including killings, torture, rape, and sexual slavery, forced religious conversions, and the conscription of children. All of these, it says, amount to violations of international human rights and humanitarian law. Some may constitute crimes against humanity or may amount to war crimes. However, the manifest pattern of attacks against the Yazidi points to the intent of ISIL to destroy the Yazidi as a group, the report says. This drawing suggests that ISIL may have perpetrated a genocide. So it was a genocide because it had the intent to destroy a group, and with that came with killings and torture and rape, which also constitute crimes against humanity and war crimes. So the reaction of the international community, where from the western side, where President Barack Obama was standing up, where he ordered targeted airstrikes on IS militants and emergency air relief for the Yazidis on August 7, 2014. He also ensured no troops deployed for combat for everyone's safety. The United States also airdropped 3,800 gallons of water and 60,128 MREs on the August 9, 2014. It also carried out 5 additional strikes on armed vehicles on August 10, 2014. 20,000 to 30,000 Yazidis fled into Syria and rescued by Kurdish forces. Another part of the reaction was the United States Special Forces, where on August 13, 2014, the U.S. troops, along with British Special Air Troops, visited the area near Mount Sinjar. It planned an evacuation of about 30,000 Yazidis trapped on Mount Sinjar. The U.S. Central Command reported a 7th airdrop which provided 114,000 meals and more than 35,000 gallons of water. The Pentagon also issued a statement on August 14th where the U.S. troops visited the previous day concluded a rescue was unnecessary. Kurdish officials and Yazidis refugees state there were still thousands of young, elderly, disabled individuals on the mountains. And Farhad Atruchi quoted how the international community was not moving because due to how the Pentagon stated a statement of that there was no rescue that needed. The United Nations also on August 13th declared level 3 emergency of mobilization of additional resources in goods, funds, and assets. It also concluded that the attacks were orchestrated by ISIS. The Arab League also concluded on August 11th, which accused ISIL committing crimes against humanity persecuting the Yazidis. The Defend International on September 6th, where it was Save the Yazidis, the world has to act now. It raises awareness on the tragedy of the Yazidis in Sinjar. It also rescues the Yazidis and Christian women, girls captured by ISIL who were also raped and tortured by them. It was a platform for discussion securing the fundamental rights of the Yazidis. And lastly, the Turkish aid, which sheltered in refugee camps in Turkey, which also gave camps receiving 6,000 refugees from Iraq. On August 30th, 14,000 Yazidis were sent there, and Turkey claims that airdropped aid to Yazidi, but Kurdish does not confirm. So here's a video where we thought that it would show how the ISIL committing genocide against Yazidis.
Genocide committed by the so-called Islamic State, or ISIL, against Yazidis in Syria and Iraq. That's the ruling of UN investigators who are calling for prosecution by the International Criminal Court. The UN says ISIL, or ISIS, is seeking to destroy the Yazidi people through killings, slavery, and other crimes.
ISIS abuse of Yazidi men, women, and children amounts to genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. The genocide is ongoing. From the day of the attack on Sinjar until today, ISIS has permanently sought to erase the Yazidis through killings, sexual slavery, enslavement, torture, and inhuman and degrading treatment and forcible transfer, causing serious bodily and mental harm.
The Yazidi community numbers around 400,000. The UN says no other religious group present in ISIL-controlled areas of Iraq and Syria has been subjected to the destruction that the Yazidis have suffered.
So we picked this video because it represented a lot of like the torture and the mental health that these Yazidis were going through.
Yeah, and it just kind of gave a summary a little bit of what was happening to the Yazidis, and it showed also when the UN was deciding if it was a genocide or not, which they did decide that it was a genocide. And then, as Nancy was saying beforehand, there was also war crimes and crimes against humanity happening simultaneously, but there definitely was genocide being committed against the Yazidis specifically.
So the aftermath of this genocide, where it occurred on January 2015, 200 Yazidis were released by ISIL. And then following that, April 8, 2015, children and elderly released after being held captive for 8 months. Because of the offensive U.S. air assault and pressure from Iraqi ground forces, were pushing northward of retaking Tikrit. People who were released were held for poor health, abuse, and neglect. On March 2016, Iraqi security forces freed a group of women from ISIL. On March 2016, Kurdistan Workers' Party freed Yazidis by ISIL in the Operation Vigilance for Martyrs of Silho. These workers were died during the operation. On April 2016, Kurdistan Workers' Party with Sinjar resistance units managed to free Yazidis held by ISIL.
And then also even today, so I think that the last report that I read about said that in August of this year, there were still Yazidi women and children that were missing. And even though it's been a couple of years since it happened, they're still facing repercussions from it. And it's not entirely